Now, in today's breakdown, we're diving deep into some explosive new cast confirmations for Power Origins Season 1 that are about to change everything we thought we knew about Ghost's past. We're talking about the return of a character from Raising Kanan who's been through absolute hell, lost everything she loved, and is coming back with a vengeance that could shake Kanan's entire operation to its core. But that's not all. They've also just confirmed Ghost's grandmother, a character who could finally answer the questions we've been asking for 6 seasons of Power, 63 episodes in total, about who James St. Patrick really was before he became Ghost. And if you think you know Ghost's backstory, think again, because what his grandmother might reveal could completely rewrite everything. We're also getting some major updates on Power Legacy and a bunch of new detectives who are about to make life very difficult for our favorite characters. So buckle up, because this is going to be one hell of a breakdown. With that being said, let's get into the new players, the returning faces, and what this all means for Power Origins Season 1 now. Just as a quick reminder for those who may have missed my recent Origins breakdown, we've already got some confirmed cast members for Power Origins. We're talking about Kay Egan, Jay Boogs, Lenny Siddell, Jill Wexler, and the returning Tremont Stinson. But there's another character returning from the world of Raising Kanan that I'm actually really excited about, and she's someone who's been through absolute devastation. I'm talking about Teresa Baselli. For those who remember her from Raising Kanan, Teresa is the widow of Sal Baselli, and this woman has lost everything. Her husband, her son, her entire world ripped apart, and she blames the Thomas family for all of it. Now, Deadline just confirmed that Nadia Dejani, who plays Teresa Baselli in Raising Kanan, will be returning to Power Origins. And her character description is interesting because they describe her as tough and unsentimental, someone who had a tumultuous past with Kanan's mother Raquel Thomas and is back to shake up Kanan's operations in the early 2000s. So let's rewind a bit for those who may have forgotten, because it has been a while since we saw Teresa in Raising Kanan. She was introduced as the wife of Sal Baselli, the leader of the Italian organization over in New Jersey. This was a family that had serious problems with Rock and the Thomas family back in Season 2 when Rock started expanding her operations across the pond into New Jersey territory. But here's where things get really dark for Teresa. Marvin was actually involved in the death of Marco Baselli, Teresa and Sal's son. He sent Marco on a mission to kill Tony Deeps, and that mission went completely wrong, ending with Marco's death. Then, if that wasn't brutal enough, we saw Marvin at the christening of his son when he put another dagger through the hearts of the Baselli family by killing Sal himself. This was on the orders of Stefano Marchetti, but as we learned in episode 10 of Season 4, Phil Russo was also behind the removal of Sal because he wanted his position in New Jersey. So essentially, Stefano Marchetti and Phil Russo conspired together to get rid of Teresa's husband, and she had no idea about the real conspiracy behind it all. We then saw her briefly in Season 4 when Unique went to pay Teresa a visit. She was still grieving, still reeling from the loss of both her husband and her son. And this is someone who's lost her entire world at no fault of her own. She was still broken, fragile, and in her mind, she blamed the Thomas family for everything. She blamed Rock, she blamed Marvin, and she was also getting tired of Phil Russo not doing anything about Sal's death. At this moment in time during Raising Kanan, she doesn't know that Phil Russo and Stefano Marchetti were actually behind the orders to kill her husband. But there's been a common theme in the world of Raising Kanan, and it's this: blame Rock. Whether she's the cause of issues or not, it always seems like everybody wants to blame Rock for everything that goes wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, Rock is far from innocent. She's done plenty of things that have caused chaos and destruction in the lives of people around her. But as of late, especially in Season 4, she's not actually the one to blame for a lot of the things happening in the world of Raising Kanan. But I guess it's the story of the boy who cried wolf, and her past is definitely catching up with her in a big way. Now, we don't know exactly what role Teresa will play, if any, in Raising Kanan Season 5. But judging by her last conversation with Unique in Episode 10, she's sick and tired of Phil Russo not doing anything about Sal's death. So it does look like she potentially may have something to say and do in Season 5 of Raising Kanan. She might even discover the truth about who really orchestrated her husband's murder, which would add another layer of complexity to her character and her motivations. But what we do know for certain is that by the time we get to Power Origins in the early 2000s, these wounds have cut deep. These scars still haven't healed in terms of her past with Rack and the Thomas family. This is a history that seems to have followed Kanan into Power Origins, and she's going to be back to cause chaos for Kanan and his operations in Season 1. And I'm actually expecting to see a very different Teresa Baselli than the one we saw in Raising Kanan. I'm expecting to see a much more stern, much colder Teresa, rather than the fragile and broken character that we've seen recently in Raising Kanan. Death can often change people in profound ways. We've seen throughout the Power universe how death and loss can transform characters completely. Look at Tommy after losing his father figure in Ghost. Look at Tariq after losing both Ghost and Rhea. Look at Rack after losing Kanan. Death changes people, and it hardens them in ways that nothing else can. And with what Teresa's been through, with the family that she's lost, her husband and her son both taken from her, with the family that she still has in terms of the Italian crime family and the Italian connection, she is someone who seems like she could be a serious problem and a legitimate threat moving forward into Power Origins. This is someone who probably wants to cause chaos and problems for the family that caused her so much pain in Raising Kanan. And from what we're hearing, Kanan does seem to be the one in her sights. Now, they specifically mentioned her history with Rock in the character description. So that's the history we know about. But whether there's anything more that happens in Season 5 of Raising Kanan, whether they butt heads and clash even more, whether there's a story or plot that keeps her around and fuels her desire for revenge, I'm sure there will be something significant. Good, now move to next Section 3. In Long, they did give us a hint towards the end of Season 4 in Episode 10, during that conversation with Unique. And I'm sure Teresa will definitely feature in Season 5 as well, before we see her again in Power Origins. So just like the returning Tremont Stinson, we can now add Teresa Baselli to the list of characters who will be crossing over into Power Origins from the world of Raising Kanan. And I think this is brilliant storytelling, because it shows how the consequences of actions in Raising Kanan don't just disappear. They follow these characters into the future, into Power Origins, and they create new conflicts and new dynamics that we haven't seen before. But now, let's move over to what might be the most intriguing new character introduction, and that's Ghost's grandmother, Grandma Charlene. This is huge, you guys, because we've been asking questions about Ghost's family and his past for literally years now. We saw this man for 6 seasons of Power, 63 episodes in total, and we still found ourselves asking whether we even really knew who James St. Patrick was. One of the biggest mysteries has always been around his family, his backstory, his mother, and the circumstances around his father, K. St. Patrick's death. Now, Deadline has confirmed that Tanya Pinkins will be playing Grandma Charlene, Ghost's loving grandmother. And her character description is really interesting because they describe her as a warm but unsteady presence who has neurological issues that leave her slipping in and out of focus. So we're finally going to be introduced to some family, which is something we've always questioned and something you guys in the comments have constantly been asking about. We've always questioned Ghost's past, his backstory, his family dynamics, his mother, and the complete mystery surrounding K. St. Patrick's death. Now, in my last Origins breakdown, I mentioned how I'm not entirely sure whether we'll actually see and be introduced to Curtis St. Patrick in the present timeline of Origins. I also mentioned how we probably won't even see Angela Valdez, at least not in the present timeline. We may see these stories played out in flashbacks and in conversations between characters, but because these are stories we've already heard about in Power, I don't necessarily think we need to see all of them being played out on screen in real time. Some of these stories where we've got questions and genuine mystery around them, for example, Breeze's death and the full story of Curtis St. Patrick, I do think we need more information for sure. We need to understand what really happened and how it shaped Ghost into the man he became. But I did mention in my last breakdown, let's get to the stuff that we don't know in terms of Ghost's backstory and past. Let's explore the gaps, the missing pieces, the moments that were never talked about in Power. And based on this casting news, them casting Ghost's grandmother and having no word whatsoever of Curtis St. Patrick, who is probably already dead in the story by the time we get into the opening episode of Power Origins. That's exactly what it looks like they're going for.